You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file.
That doesn't sound too hard.
Boom! This is Making Tracks.
This is the way.
Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
I know these people. They are brutal. Does this look Jedi to you?
That's not how the Force works.
They'll never see it coming.
Count me in.
Misa back.
What's up, everybody? This is episode 221 of Making Tracks, brought to you by those fine folk over at fanpatracks.com. My name's Mark, one of your co-hosts, and joining me this week, he's a man. He's also my brother in the Force. He's kind of a blues brother as well. It's Mr. Mark Newbold. Mark, how you doing, buddy?
I'm very good, mate. How are you?
I'm very well. We are rapidly approaching the fantastic time that is Star Celebration. We're counting down the weeks now to Andor Season 2. Things are starting to get really exciting. You know, the social media is abuzz with Star Wars news and everything else. So hopefully plenty to talk about.
We've got loads to talk about today. We've also got, as a special treat, and I know you enjoyed it the other week, absolutely loads of listeners' questions. I mean, loads of listeners' questions. No prevaricating. This is sort of one word, maybe one sentence answer type questions.
What the hell have we got going on in the news this week?
Great news if you are attending the screening of The Empire Strikes Back that's taking place on the 24th of April. It's part of the Turner Classic Movies Festival. George Lucas is going to present the screening of The Empire Strikes Back. Incredible to think that in 2025, George Lucas is going to come out and present not only a Star Wars film, but in my humble opinion, the best ever Star Wars film there's ever been and probably ever will be. What do you make of that? It's George doing something Star Wars related in 2025. I mean, we've got the 50th coming up, so we know he's going to be involved in that. But this is a bit tidy, isn't it, if you're in the room for that? Bearing in mind that loads of us are going to be in Japan. I mean, you could actually go to this, Mark.
I mean, yeah, I suppose I could go to it, but it probably sounds like it's going to be a fairly exclusive guest list, do you think, to something like this? Don't recommend just let any old riff-raff off the street, even though I am an industry professional, as you like to
You are an
me.
industry professional, yes. Never taught yourself down, Mark. That's my job.
It is, exactly. But I mean, no, it's cool. I mean, it's really nice because we went through the divorce. Maybe George needed reminding at points because it kind of like when he sold, it didn't feel like a divorce. It kind of felt like a separation to begin with, you know, with the handover of Kathleen. And the problem with that is that obviously, you know, lines get blurred. I mean, obviously, he's now fully stepped away as far as we know. And, you know, every now and again, he pops up on set to cuddle Baby Yoda and all that. This is probably the first thing that he's prominently done for a few years anyway.
Yeah.
And why not? It's a classic film festival. You don't really get much more classic than The Empire Strikes Back and original Star Wars trilogy these days. So absolutely. What a gift. If you're there, if you've been able to get tickets or something, that will be amazing.
I don't think there's any expectation for him to turn up at Celebration. So I don't think anybody's thinking that that's going to be a thing. Certainly not this Celebration, maybe 2027. And with the movies and the TV shows now pretty much all moving over to the UK and them being filmed here as opposed to being filmed in the States, that also makes you wonder whether or not you'll see George turn up on the set of Ahsoka Season 2 or turn up on the set of Dawn of the Jedi or New Jedi Order or whatever else is coming next. But as you correctly say, it was a separation rather than a divorce. That's a good way of putting it. But the further away you move from the day that he signed the paper in front of Bob Iger and the whole world. Plus, you know, he's 81 this year. So, you know, it feels more special that Lucas would turn up to an event like this.
Hopefully he'll do more than just what they do at the BFI. You know, when they present a film at the BFI, they're always just going to have somebody in the corner just giving you a couple of blurbs and a little bit of a chat.
Yeah.
It's always interesting, isn't it? You know, with Empire Strikes Back, because it was the first Star Wars film that he didn't direct, and he's firmly in the executive producer kind of seat, driving it in slightly different and pulling his hair out in a slightly different way. You know, he wasn't in control of a shoot. It was Irvin Kershner and stuff like that. So,
and Kurtz, yeah,
probably a different experience for him as well.
What I kind of hope is that the last few celebrations, when we've had a message come from George, considering he's one of the great movie makers, it's been filmed portrait style on an iPhone in really low light and bad quality. It looks like an afterthought. I'm sure he put more thought than than that into it. But I'm kind of hoping that he just sits in the wings, films it on his iPhone. They throw that up on the screen instead of him actually walking out. I think that would just be the best trolling ever.
Either that or just for one of those like Teams calls or something where like somebody's going to go, George, you're on mute. No one can hear you.
Hi, this is Alexander Freed, and you are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Speaking on stage at last weekend's Emerald City Comic Con, John Boyega took a whole bunch of questions, and one of them was quite a cute one. It was, what was his favourite moment in the Star Wars galaxy? And his answer was one that many people might not expect. He said, there are so many Star Wars memories, but this is one I've told before. It's my favourite, so I'll tell it again. It was taking Harrison Ford to my local area and feeding him Nigerian food. What I liked about it was when he asked me, I've just been eating chicken breast and veggies, I want to eat something that's from your culture, because I spoke to him about my dual citizenship and where I'm from and stuff. His personal security were like, where are you taking Indiana Jones? I was like, I'm taking Indiana Jones to the hood, and I'm taking him to the trenches because he's got fans there too. And he did. A whole bunch of Nigerians were outside the restaurant. As soon as they saw Harrison Ford, they were like, oh my God, are you Harrison Ford? And he said, I used to be. But the whole point of that is, being an industry professional, Mike, you will know this, but I'm not quite so sure on how these things work. When actors are working together, do you think there's a requirement for them to be anything other than cordial? You hear about set conflict, and you hear conversely about like the Next Generation crew that got together and are just like the best family and have been for 30 plus years. Do you think that Harrison Ford felt, no, it's Harrison Ford, he doesn't have to do anything, and I've seen the two together in a room together, and there's definitely a bond, there's definitely a spark, but do you think actors need to be familiar and friendly with each other, or do you think they can just work together and go their separate ways?
You sometimes hear about actors who have got strong personal or good off-screen chemistry with their whoever they're playing against. Then, for whatever reason on screen, it doesn't actually translate. Other times, you have amazing chemistry, partly because there might be a little bit of off-screen conflict. I suppose it's probably really difficult when you have generationally a larger gap between two different actors. What's the commonalities between John Boyega and Harrison Ford? And I suppose it depends upon Harrison at this point, as the kind of elder statesman of, the galaxy far, far away. How much does he maybe impart his own experience of like what happened when suddenly he was, starring in a Star Wars film, which becomes a mega massive blockbuster? Does he impart any advice, or is that 40, 50 years removed? So therefore, is it relevant? But I suppose it kind of is. Sometimes you hear there's misunderstandings or something offset. For me personally, when you hear about that, I feel kind of slightly more disappointed, especially then if the on-screen chemistry is so good. It highlights the fact that this is all fake. But I would love to be a fly on the wall just to hear what those two chat about and the kind of banter that they have. What is Harrison Ford's relationship with, say, like Daisy on Force Awakens?
That's a great question, because she really did feel like the newbie in that equation, because John Boyega had already done Attack the Block. And actually, there's a piece on the site this week where Boyega thanks Tom Cruise for being the one that kind of put him in JJ's line of sight. Cruise had seen Attack the Block and said, there's this kid in Attack the Block, I think he might be somebody you want to keep your eye on. And 3 or 4 years later, Boyega's the new Finn, or the first Finn. He's Finn. It doesn't change the work on screen. But I think for fans, and this is completely outside of the point, because some actors get on great and you get good chemistry. Other actors, you kind of know. Michael Caine and Morgan Freeman work well together and are friends off screen. And then you see films that they've done together and it kind of comes through. But then you watch a show from the 80s like Moonlighting with Sybil Shepherd and Bruce Willis, who by all accounts couldn't stand the sight of each other. And yet their relationship in that show was one of the long answered questions, will they, won't they? So sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. To your question about Ford and Boyega, though, John there was no front to him. He was completely as seen, bouncing around the set. I think that probably translated to Ford, who was clearly at that point of time happy to come back to Star Wars. I would agree with you. I would love to sit in on that meal.
If you're John, do you think I've got to be on my best behaviour?
We saw Harrison Ford, just to jump in, we saw Harrison Ford being interviewed by Alison Hammond, who was the most irreverent interviewer he'd ever had when Blade Runner 2 was out, and he was in stitches laughing. So I would imagine if Boyega went in with that kind of energy, I don't care that you're Harrison Ford, we're just going to have a conversation in a meal. he probably loved it.
I mean, he does have his tendency on certain Saturday night chat shows and stuff to like play up a whole kind of curmudgeon thing. But then like you hear other reports actually, even from India and stuff, that he's actually really funny. And I'm sure like many an actor, he probably doesn't suffer fools. So if you kind of rock up and you haven't learnt your lines and you're late and you're a bit of a mess and stuff, that's the kind of stuff where he's probably going to get a bit gnarled because, that's not how you do it. But then if you're there, you're showing willing, you want to learn, especially somebody like John Boyega. How can you not like John Boyega?
Hi, this is Dave Chapman, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
So 2025 is the 20th anniversary of Revenge of the Sith. That film is definitely in our minds right now. Hopefully there'll be more announcements regarding Celebration Japan and celebrating the film over there. But Nerdist have posted an article pulling together videos and clips, which have been out there for a while, of the cut and deleted scenes from Episode 3. With Andor Season 2 approaching, it puts those scenes in a new light. There's the classic scene where you first see Mon Mothma back in 2005, plus other scenes that show that the systematic dismantling of the Republic and of the Jedi Order wasn't done in any other way than making it happen bit by bit. Mark, looking now 20 years back to Revenge of the Sith, with the viewpoint of Andor coming and all the politics that take place in that season, one of the questions I put in the article on the site was, wouldn't it be great if George came back and thought, this is the perfect moment to do a director's cut of Episode 3 and put in all those deleted scenes, and wouldn't the fans just absolutely chew that up? But do you think that would work? There's a lot more Padme Amidala stuff. There's a lot more politics, which is very key to Star Wars at the moment. Could you see the interest or the requirement or the need for a director's cut like this of Revenge of the Sith?
That's always a difficult question. And the reason why is because you always have to go, there's normally a good reason why they removed scenes, or even if it's just from a basic kind of like runtime perspective, or if it's a case of sometimes a little bit in the case of, I think, A New Hope Special Edition, you don't really learn any more new information from that reinserted scene of Jabba the Hutt than you do from the conversation with Greedo. So there's that kind of redundancy aspect. Do you know what? I would say if they were to do them, and I guess the question is, are those scenes canon? That's a reason not to do it, is to worry about like the canonicity of stuff. Do you know what? In this day and age, they should do it on Disney Plus, and literally you've got a branching option. So you click on Revenge of the Sith, and you've got the option to do like the George Lucas director's cut or like the original theatrical version. Problem is that it's kind of almost what we said about George doing the TCM Empire Strikes Back screening. He stepped away from it. Whether or not they could put them back in without his say-so and agreement and nod to, and then also would he want those scenes completed, because some of those haven't been finished fully. Some of the VFX and green screen, I think, was kind of like not fully done. There's a few blue screen shots in Palpatine's stuff which I think's a little bit questionable. Would they literally just drop them straight in? Or would they want to get them finished? And then would we open the whole can of worms up to a mess of tinkering? And then do you stop at just Revenge of the Sith? Why not do it for the 1, 2, and 3? Why stop at 1, 2, and 3? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and give the people what they want? And I think if you kind of go, right, the theatrical versions or the versions that we have now on Disney Plus, those are the like official canon versions. And if you kind of go, right, the deleted director's cut is just a special edition, it's not canon or whatever, we're not going to show it in the cinema, it's literally only on Disney Plus, then you make it clear. But it kind of gets a little bit messy, doesn't it, when you have so many different versions floating around, and then of course fans are still gagging for like original unaltered versions of A New Hope to be re-released.
A lot of the literature that came out around the time of Revenge of the Sith is now legends, so there's that. We've already mentioned George today, as he said, with the Empire screening, and now thinking about him with this, although this is just a hypothetical question. Wouldn't it be nice? It would be nice. It would be nice, yeah. And one thing about the special editions that always bugged me, that I wish they'd done, that they didn't, was, for example, you mentioned the perfect scene, you mentioned the Jabba scene, which was at the time technologically fantastic. And technology is not the issue now. It's not whether or not they can do it or make it look amazing. They can do it for television. One thing they didn't do for that Jabba scene was they didn't have John Williams create a new piece of music to go behind that scene. They just used Jabba's court music from Jedi. And so that really stuck out. It wasn't a new piece, it was that. So there's moments like that. But I think with this, and a lot of what we see in these sequences, and let's not forget, a lot of Attack of the Clones was using Phantom Menace music. If you listen to the Clone soundtrack, there's a lot of music in that that's not in the film. The Geonosis battle, they're going back to the Naboo music, they're going back to the pod race music. There's lots of different mixes. But I think if they did do something here, they wouldn't be constricted as much, because a lot of it is talking heads.
It's the kind of a West Wing side of like the Star Wars trilogy. That gets my vote straight away.
I think with these sequences, if they drop them back in and did something with it, I don't think there's anything that we've not spun off from or would logically not fit. Certainly in terms of Mon Mothma.
I mean, you kind of think about it right now would be the perfect time to do it, wouldn't it?
Would. They could use they're not. Andor's filmed and shut down and locked and done. But if they wanted to, they could have used scenes like this in flashback moments just to point how far back this rebellion goes. Because there's that one sequence where Amidala basically says to Bail Organa, stop talking, don't say these things out loud. We know what you're getting at. Leave it there. And basically, that's the rebellion starting before the Republic's gone. So it shows you how on the ball they were at the time, just how difficult turning the tanker around was.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
A couple of days ago, I put the question out to our Fantha listeners, have you got any questions that me and Mark can dive into? And bless you all, we've had loads of replies. And I'm going to start off. Are you ready for this, Mark?
You may fire when ready.
First question. You'll never guess who this is from. It's from Skyhawker. The question is, you're going to like this. And our short answers, don't forget, we're going for brevity on this one.
And I've not seen any of these. You've not shared these, so...
I've not.
It's a slightly nerve-wracking again.
Question 1. Here we go. Sleep, marry, or kill Vice Admiral Holdo, Edie Khan, that's Cyril's mom from Andor, or Gordulla the Hutt?
Oh my God. Sleep, marry, or kill. Can I just say I'll sleep with all three of them?
It's such a cop-out.
I just want everybody to imagine the mechanics of actually sleeping with a Hutt.
You just want to celebrate the love. I know what you're thinking.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm going to say.
Plenty of love to go around there.
I don't have to kill Vice Admiral Holdo because she managed to destroy herself by jumping to hyperspace in The Last Jedi. I don't think anybody's going to want to marry Edie Khan. And I'm currently reading Legacy of Vader, and Gordulla the Hutt's just turned up in that. And she's not entirely likable. So I'm going to say, oh, blimey.
You've got to kill the Hutt.
I'm going to kill the Hutt.
I think I would marry Holdo because actually I remember in the young Princess Leia books, she comes across as being pretty bonkers.
She was more Moon Mother than Mon Mothma.
Yeah, it is in real life. Yeah, so there you go. So, and then, so we sleep with whoever's left.
Okay, next question is from our good buddy Hassan Aslam. And the question is, do you expect Mark Hamill and or Harrison Ford to be at Star Wars Celebration's 50th anniversary if it's held in the US in 2027?
I would be sorely disappointed if either of them didn't turn up. You know, like we said about celebrating the anniversaries in general, that's the one about they can get the agents to go, look, come on, it's the 50th anniversary, just one more time. Then we'll leave you alone. We won't ask you to do another celebration if you don't want to do it. I'd hope that if they're all still around live and kicking, as many of the original trilogy main cast as possible. Anthony Daniels, I mean, he'll be the first to be announced for Celebration. John Williams would be nice again, like they did. Was it the 40th?
Orlando for the 40th, yeah.
Yeah, God, can't believe that's almost 10 years ago. That's crazy. Billy D, all being well, Mark and Harrison, and good old JL as well, if he's up for it.
Totally agree. If we don't see Mark or Harrison or Williams or Lucas or whatever at the 50th anniversary one, I'll be very surprised. It feels like that's going to be a mega one. And then whatever comes after that in probably 2029, that'll be very interesting to see how that one plays out. Next question from Greig Darth Elvis Robertson. We miss you, Elvis. Which celebration has been your favourite to date?
Essen, Germany, Europe too.
That comes up so often, doesn't it? I find
weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it is weird. And especially with Japan, it feels like Japan's a much smaller show. So it feels like a comparison point to Essen because so many of us never went to the original Japan. So it's the one that you can compare it to. I wouldn't argue with that. I loved the first Celebration Europe in 2007.
That was my first Star Wars convention ever, but on a couple of Reading Comic Cons. That was probably my first major Comic Con.
My first one was Empire Day in '96 in Watford, but in terms of big Star Wars ones, and it was Europe. But yeah, Europe too in Essen was amazing. We had a great time getting Jeremy there and all that malarkey before the show even started. But as a show, it was amazing. All the reveals that were there, all the people that were there. Sansweet was there, all the artist alley. It was amazing.
And I don't know about you.
You inducted me into the Rebel Legion.
I did. Yes. God. When we were young. But the thing was, I went to quite a few panels at 07. That was like my first convention. And I didn't really know what I was doing because I was there all by myself for the 3 days. I did as much as I could and saw as many panels as I could, spent way too much money. A pattern that then gets repeated every couple of years at Celebration. But at Essen, I was lucky that the German Rebel Legion base invited the UK Elstree base to help them out and support them. We took over the Tantive. I didn't drive it over, set it up, and then I was just given this exhibitor pass for the rest of the weekend, which was like amazing because then you know what it's like. You get an exhibitor pass, you get in early. Yeah. So then front of the queues for all the exclusives when they dropped, managed to get into so many panels. Downside, as much as I loved 2016 and then 2023, had responsibilities and I had to be around the stand and stuff like that. You can't just go, right, I'm going to go and queue up for 3 hours to kind of get into this panel. I'm yet to do an American one. So that is the plan for next year, by hook or by crook. That would be me being a punter or hanging off of the coattails of Fan for Tracks.
Mate, if you're coming to 2027, then we're doing Making Tracks together, no doubt about it.
Absolutely, definitely.
No doubt about it. Essen 2 was amazing. I loved Celebration 6 in Orlando. I had very fond memories of that show. I really enjoyed Anaheim in 2015. There's more good ones than bad. It's not been a bad one. 2017 didn't light me up, but then the 40th panel was the most amazing panel I've ever been to. So even there was highlight.
That 40th anniversary panel, I don't think, we'll see what happens in a couple of years' time. I don't know if that panel could actually get beaten for poignancy because of everything to do with Carrie and stuff like that. I think that is the reason why.
Second question from Greg. What announcement would you love to be made at Celebration Japan?
Do you know, that's a really difficult one because I'd say like a film announcement. But then like we had loads of film announcements at 2016 which haven't actually come to pass yet. So it's I'll go back and as to what we talked about a little bit earlier and say I think I would love to see an original untouched version of the original trilogies come out as a high collector's edition like Blu-ray box set. But literally they throw everything. So you get like a 70mm version and a 30mm version. And fine, if it costs us 300 quid, I don't care. I love the special edition and they will always be the canon ones. But I think just from a conversational and a appeasing the fan perspective, I think maybe it's time that they do that.
I totally agree as well. A proper high-end physical media box set release of the original trilogy with the vinyls and with everything.
Yeah.
Make script in there, like the Executor box set. Something else.
God, yeah. Yeah, we need more Executor box sets.
For me, a couple of things I definitely want to see in the reveal of where the next celebration is going to be. I think we're all pretty sure it's either Anaheim or Orlando in probably May 27 to hit the actual date of the 50th. Either the gimmick May the 4th date or the actual May 25th, whichever one they want to go for. So I think that's going to be announced. I hope it is, because I always remember you saying about Essen when we were at Celebration 6. I was with Jedi News at the time. We got Ian McDiarmid literally on the row in front of us. Mary Franklin came on stage and says, and the next Star Wars celebration will be, and the umpire band came out, Essen in Germany, and half the crowd started booing, and our whole row were up punching the air because we knew we could drive to Essen. That was a happy day. That was a very happy day.
When they announced Japan, everybody's suddenly starting going, are you going to Japan? You're going to Japan? Like on their last day of like celebration, looking at flights and stuff. And I mean, at the time I was like, I think I was kind of fairly pragmatic and said, if I can, I will. Absolutely. But you wonder what the conversion rate of those who said they were going the last celebration to those who are actually going to end up going this year.
And in terms of what you said, I'm hopeful for more movie and TV reveals, but and I don't know how this would work. And I'm saying this as somebody who's written for Insider for nearly 20 years, but I would love to see the return in some form or fashion of a physical fan club. You pay your money, you get a poster, you get a pencil, you get a 4 times a year little news magazine, something like that. That's why I love the Rancho membership, because you actually physically get something.
Hi, it's John Jackson Miller, author of Star Wars: The Living Force, and you're listening to Fanta Tracks.
Next question from Rob Wainfur. What is the best official and unofficial Star Wars video game ever? He says, I'll start. Sit down original arcade and unofficial. I was going to say 3D Star Strike on the Spectrum, but Elite Dangerous makes me feel like Mando when I pick up bounty hunter missions. Now, I don't play enough games, so I couldn't even hazard a guess at an unofficial one. For an official one, I will say, I'm not going to argue with what Rob said there. The sit-down original 3D Vector Arcade is just beautiful, as is the sit-down Episode 1 Racer. That was fantastic in the arcade.
So when we were at Elstricon the other week, they had one-up Star Wars Arcade. What you've got, like a half-scale one. And that was fun. I spent way too much time on that game and not really trooping. But then it was fine because I was in costume. So it's all in the US. Games-wise, I tell you what, it's only really recently, in the last 10 years, that I've really struggled to have time to play games. And so there's so many different games in that time period. For me, one of the ones that I remember most fondly would be Shadows of the Empire and Dark Forces as well. But also like Star Wars on the NES. That was the first Star Wars game I played. I was definitely more of a console kid than a arcade kid. I remember playing, the sit-down Star Wars arcade vector game, but I couldn't call me a Star Wars fan at that age, I don't think. But unofficial, I do know what he's talking about with Elite. I remember actually having to go up to my friend's house who had it on the BBC Master System and used to play it. And I thought that was like playing Star Wars. And also Wing Commander.
That's a great shout, yeah.
You know, every now and again, especially before like the annual bonus comes out, you kind of go, oh, should I just buy some old consoles, even if I don't play them very often, just so I've got them and got the option to play the games.
Next question from Burr Martin. How did C-3PO, a droid that can't bend, and R2-D2, a droid with no arms, get an unconscious Padme Amidala back onto the ship and up on a bed in Revenge of the Sith? I love this question.
Well, don't we see R2 drag in 3PO in Attack of the Clones?
We do. He puts that magnetic clamp on 3PO and sort of drag. Well, I think he pulls his head off at one point, doesn't he?
Yeah, pulls her head off. I kind of think that's possible. To be fair, I feel like, as with everything with those two characters, 3PO is quote unquote the brains. So therefore, I think R2 was there trying to do the heavy lifting. He's got enough like articulated arms and stuff like that. And also he's got thrusters that he might have been able to pick her up and chuck her on.
I mean, don't forget, in A New Hope, we do see 3PO dropping Jawa bodies on the funeral pyre.
Yeah, exactly. He's probably got more articulation than Anthony Daniels had in the suit. So we don't see him doing this stuff because Anthony Daniels can do it. But like, he's got the joints in all the right places, hasn't he?
I've seen that Topps trading card.
Yes, indeed. I have it framed. He won't sign it, mind you.
You've been shafted.
Indeed. That's my way of doing it. It's who's to say that he can't? I don't think we've ever seen him kind of say, I can't pick up anything. And as you said, he picks up Jawas. Yeah,
pick up a Padme. It's like a chocolate advert.
There's a Hasbro game in there, I reckon.
There is, isn't there?
This is Michael Morisi, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
3 final questions from Mark Spriggs, who's a regular question asker. He sent so many questions in, I'm saving 4 for next week. One character from the EU that hasn't crossed over to canon that you'd love to see?
Mara Jade. Kyle-Katarn.
Kyle-Katarn, It feels like he should have been in Rogue One, doesn't it?
Yeah, do you know, I really do wish. If that's when you do it in Andor or, Rogue One. Abeloth.
For me, it would be Jessa and Doc from Han Solo at Star's End. You see Pelimotto in Mando and Book of Boba and such. You see mechanics out there, and obviously in a galaxy like this, there would be many mechanics. So Doc and Jessa would be very cool. I totally agree with you. Mara Jade, if they do it right, they've got to do it right. If they're going to bring Mara Jade in, you've got to do it properly.
Yeah.
You can tweak the character, but there's a tone and a mood and a look about her. They need to be honest to that.
You have to land the tone and the look. The rest of it, the relationship.
You can work around that, can't you?
I think so.
With Thrawn.
Exactly, because I think they were pretty clever with Thrawn. I think they did enough prep work to say to people, hey, yeah, Thrawn's coming, but he's not quite the Thrawn that you remember. But he kind of is. That meant that a lot of people weren't suddenly going, oh, #ain't my Thrawn.
Good point. Next question is Darth Revan or Ulic Qel-Droma, or both, returning to canon in their own film, live action, or animated series?
Ulic Qel-Droma, definitely, and Nomi Sunrider as well. I would say, if it was me, and this is me not being very imaginative, but I'd say do it animated and do it very similar to the style of Dark Horse comics.
Totally love that. If you could go back to that style and that look, Cam Kennedy look, do that. I'm saying Cam Kennedy, Dark Empire, and you see Nomi Sunrider in Dark Empire, don't you? As a wizened old lady. But that sort of style, if you could do something like that and do Tales of the Jedi and get into that era, I think animation's the place for all of that. Revan, I'll be amazed if we don't see Revan at some point. It feels like a character that's sort of waiting to be adapted.
Yeah, exactly. I think Revan's probably a film character.
And final question from Mark, and our final listener's question for the day. New Jedi Order question. Will Rey follow the Clone Wars style or be less formal like the EU? And I think in that question he means in her teachings. Will it be a formal, very formal, like Clone Wars era Jedi Council? Or how do you think she will approach the teaching that she will hand out in those films?
She'll probably base it on more of an informal teaching, because if those books that she's got, if one of them is like how to set up a Jedi Order, like an Idiot's Guide or something, and they say you can't have attachment to something like that. But I kind of feel like she would probably more likely to follow the teachings of her teacher, i.e. Luke, and probably the more informal way of doing it. I struggle to see Rey being that dogmatic.
I agree.
And I think also by doing that, basically has a lesson not been learned. Maybe that's actually part of a conversation of the film. She tries it one way. Let's say maybe she tries it to be more formal and then realizes it's not working. Maybe she has to be, less formal. And I suppose it comes down to a whole notion of what the Force is. If the Force is always in motion, is fluid, then your teachings need to be always in motion and kind of fluid.
It depends on what sort of Rey we get. You look at Luke in A New Hope and you step forward 3.5 years to Return of the Jedi. The tone of the character is quite different. He's still Luke, but he's grown, he's changed, he's seen
very
a lot.
Earnest. A lot more earnest, yeah.
Yeah, a lot's happened to him. So I wonder with Rey, where you're jumping forward 15 years, she's certainly more serious from Force Awakens when her main focus of life was scavenging enough to get some portions and live. It was a different world completely for her. And then you step ahead to the end of Rise of Skywalker and look at what's at stake for her and the whole galaxy. But I wonder another 15 years on, we don't know what's going to happen in those intervening years.
Yeah.
She's been on Acto and she's looked at the books and she's had lessons from Luke. And who knows, we see her, Luke and Leia at the end of The Rise of Skywalker. Who's to say that they're not communing? You watch all of Obi-Wan Kenobi and it took 6 episodes and 10 years before it for Qui-Gon to appear to Obi-Wan. At that point of the end of The Rise of Skywalker, when she's accepted who she is and she's ready to move on, she's buried the lightsabers and off we go. Luke and Leia turn up. So there could be whole conversations, lessons of life and the Force that she gets. Will she have to earn those lessons by fighting for it? Will she just soak it up just as her? You know, is the Rey that we make 15 years on going to be completely different? Daisy's pretty much going to be the right age for the character, so she's not going to look that different, to be fair. So I don't see why she would need to be a completely different person. And I totally agree with you. I think her teachings would be more informal.
So we're both at Echo Live next week. Shall we just walk around and see if we can get people to ask us Star Wars questions?
This is genius. We've not planned this. You've just thought it. Let's just walk around and randomly accost people at Echo Base.
The more questions that we get next week, the less I'm likely to spend.
Man, that is brilliant.
That's proper adulting. But let's see what happens. So if you are at Echo Live next week and you happen to see me and him walking around in our Fanfa shirts, I will make sure I bring mine because I'm not trooping. By all means, stop us, have a chat. Hopefully we'll have a recorder in our hand and let's see what interesting things we can talk about. Big thank you to everybody who sent in listeners' questions today. That was very awesome. Next time, send them to me, then Mark won't have a chance to have a think before he answers. All his answers are a lot more thought out and serious, whereas mine are just like complete nonsense.
There's a method in the madness, honestly.
There is, yeah, I know. Why change a habit of a lifetime? But if you want to send it in a more formal way, like an email or voice note, Mr. Newbold can tell you how you can do it.
Yes, I can, and here's how.
Email radio@fanthatracks.com. Head to links.fanthatracks.com for links to our social media feeds, Fanthatracks TV and Fanthatracks Radio. Thanks to James Semple for the Fanthatracks intro, Blues Harvest for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. New episodes drop Tuesdays and Fridays at 7 o'clock UK time. Our weekly news show, Good Morning Tatooine, goes live Sundays at 9 o'clock UK time on Facebook and YouTube. And remember, Fanthatracks is absolutely free, so it costs nothing to stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news.
And that's me done for this episode, Mark.
Excellent. I've had too many listeners' questions, so I'm listener question out. So until next week, and I will see you at Echo Live.
You will.
Which will be very exciting. Everybody else, have a fantastic week in Star Wars, whatever that is to you. And as always, may the Force be with you.
Coming up next on Fanthatracks Radio, it's Start Your Engines.